To order, and we do have a quorum. We have, well, we're waiting for Aaron. Is Aaron Jones coming?
She will be here in 3 minutes.
Okay, wow.
Tracking her?
I am tracking her, yes.
Well, we can go ahead and we've been called to order. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Let's take a look at the minutes. Well done, Ross. Just absolutely clean as a whistle, in my opinion. Anyone got any comments about the minutes? Do I hear a motion for approval?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. Budget and Finance did meet yesterday noon, and so I'm turning over to James Perry to present our discussion. He's got everything neat and tidy to present to you.
Yeah, so obviously the financials were sent out earlier in the week, so if you didn't get a chance to review them, please do so. Let us know if you have any questions. But because we do plan to have a lengthy discussion tonight on a few other things, I'm just hitting the very high topics here. So overall, we're in really good budget position. Total expenses are totaling 32.4%, which is right on track. A lot of that savings is coming from personnel, which is just hitting below or right around 30%. So again, overall in good shape. The only thing that we kind of notated of something that struck us as out of the ordinary and something that we need to follow up on is there was a water softener issue that resulted in a much higher water bill than usual, to the tune of, I didn't write that down.
I think it was about 900.
900, okay, so that's what I had. So, and then we do anticipate that kind of floating a little bit into November's financials as well, as that problem wasn't specifically solved until November. So look for that to also be a little bit of the conversation next month, but overall everything is appearing in shape and we can stop for any questions, otherwise it comes for recommendation for approval.
Any questions? It really was a clean, straightforward meeting regarding our monthly financials. We're a third of the way through the year, so things are going fine. Okay, all in favor of approval of financials, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, let's move on to Budget and Finance Committee, and we're going to discuss, I'll have a little discussion here of our preparations for the 25-26 budget. You want to lead us on that, Sarah, on what we discussed and what we're going to try to do?
Sure. We received some guidance from James Bronner that we're all departments are trying to come in as flat as possible this year, and so we looked at ways to keep our services and commodities flat. I would point out that in the contract services line, that's where in this current year, 24-25, excuse me, we are saving the amount of money from about $20,000 from switching away from the Cersei Dynex company. So that will still be, you'll notice, oh, maybe I didn't send any printouts for this one. No, I didn't. Just because we were going to try to do a high-level view of it, just that we will still have savings in that line. And we were hoping to possibly increase personnel by somewhere in the $8,000 range to have a few more part-time hours. So the overall budget, with everything that's in the current budget, next year's budget proposal at this point in time still comes in just under what we're projected for this year, at $1,084,682. So that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Budget and Finance has another meeting set up at noon on December 2nd, and we should have budget information to bring to you at the December meeting for approval, because the city wants our budget by the 10th. Well, I think that's just a little,
That is our board meeting day.
yeah, that's our board meeting day, so we'll get it down, and Sarah will take care to make sure Valerie and James know that it's on its way the next day. You're shaking your head, and Ann, and saying, is that's the time you guys think it's supposed to come?
They've changed all of the deadlines this
Yeah.
year. I think our first, that Saturday session we're doing
Yeah.
is tentatively January 25th. And then if we need a second one, I think he said 2 weeks after that. So we aren't probably gonna do much discussion as a council till then. We usually get documents before that leading up there, but
Right. Yeah, I think at this point, we would submit the budget to James and the city administration, and then we'll have our meeting with James as he prepares the budget package, the whole package for the council to look at.
It seemed like it was a few days earlier, but we have our board meeting, we can get it done on that,
Yeah.
at that time. There aren't gonna be any big surprises in our budget presentation.
No.
No, everything's
right,
pretty tight.
yeah.
Okay, I don't think we need any action on item 5. Let's move to the real action here on item 6, personnel and policies. And Elaine is not able to be here, but it's Jim and Bob who are going to handle this next discussion.
Mostly Jim.
Well, I'll take the first two, and then we'll tag team whatever else needs to be done there. We had our P&P committee meeting last Friday, had a pretty lengthy meeting because of the nature of the proposals. You should have in your packet kind of a memo format that says proposed changes to the director's annual review. And I ask you just to concentrate on that for a few minutes. The first two paragraphs really outline our past practices. You've heard those explained to you before. You've heard me say with somewhat frustration in my voice that we really have two non-parallel evaluation processes. One follows the city form, and one follows our meeting long-range goals. And even though their end result is to evaluate the performance, it is two different vocabularies, two different tools, two different routes for that. That's the world that we live in. We've also heard P&P from our long-range plan strategies, from individual comments along the line that we should look at the director review process. And that's what we did at our meeting Friday, and we're making 3 recommendations. And those are on your paper. Let me go over those. I think some are more significant than others. So the first one, which says modifications to the city's annual review. This is a fairly standard form in which there are job description behaviors on one side, there's a rating scale of 1 through 5 on the other side. We fill out the P&P committee, 3 of us, rank Sarah 1 to 5, and then we meet with her jointly to say if there's differences, high or low, we kind of work through those. So we've done that for the 7 or 8 years that I've been part of this thing. And probably the only thing that surprised me is that I don't think our committee has done a good enough job of sharing our summaries with the board president and with the rest of the board. We've done it. You may feel like I do at times when the budget committee meets. I say, good, they're doing that. I'm glad they're doing that. I don't need to be overly involved with that. But we may have misread that, frankly. You know, our whole board might want to have had more information both about the process and results of that. So the first change that we're suggesting is to move away from a rubric that says 1 through 5, which is always hard to interpret. Because after doing this 3 or 4 years, before this time, then Danielle, city HR person, said, the norm really should be a 3. That means, which says you're meeting expectations. Sometimes 3 doesn't feel as good as a 4 or 5, so how much gooder are you when you get a 4 or a 5? And how much worse should you feel if you get a 2? It really is kind of ambiguous there. As we looked at the purpose of evaluation, Sarah's or otherwise, it really seems it comes down to a couple of big questions. Are you meeting the expectations? If so, great. That's what we would expect. That's what we're planning for. Let's move on. If you're not meeting those expectations, that kind of kicks in another gear with our P&P. If it drops to, in our language, was a 1, then that would call for some more action on our part. Sarah's more action. And in my school vocabulary, that was a personal improvement plan. Okay, that was kind of past practice for that. We never found that situation in the 7 or 8 years that we worked with Sarah there. So the first suggestion is that we do with what we think is clear language for the rating scale. So 3 really is you're meeting all expectations and can move on accordingly for that. Questions on that one? Yes.
What do you do in response to a partially meets expectations?
We've noted that, so that would, in old language, that would be a 2. Okay. What we've done there is when there's differences of more than 2 in our ratings between us and here, then that requires a conversation. And it usually, in fact, I'm not sure we've had any 2s that I can think of in the last.
I mean, going forward.
Going forward, right.
Does that mean a PIP? Does that mean just a conversation, or what's your?
That's been our past practice, is to have a conversation. If we move into this new language, I think it would be a conversation with us, with the director, and perhaps with pulling in from the board president, something like that. I'm making some of this stuff up because we've never been there before. Great question. Okay.
And you might want to, I mean, I don't know if you want to put that somewhere in writing, right?
Right.
How you're going to respond, just so it's consistent
Yep.
with everybody, the next director you have, and,
Right.
you know.
Right. Okay, I'm noting that. Other questions there? Okay, let's move on to 2, which I think is probably a bigger change here. So in the past, again, there's been 3 people filling out the city's form. And what we're suggesting is that any board member that wishes to can fill out the same form. And that means that we'll aggregate up to 9 scores if all of us participate. So we're suggesting we use the same form so that we don't just, well, one says, well, I want to go in and talk to Sarah on my own. No, it's one, this is the way that we do our director stuff. Here's the form, we've used it before, we're going to use it again. So it really kind of levels the playing field, and it gives everybody, if they so wish, it doesn't say it's mandatory, but any trustee that wishes to will get the form the same time everybody else does. It will be compiled, and when P&P sits down with her, we'll look at Sarah and the up to 9 scores, and then we'll have that same kind of conversation. It says using the aggregate results, P&P will practice the discussion with the director. And then the other part is filing a written summary with the city. We've done that before. I'm not sure we filed a written report with our president. So this might be one additional step there, okay?
So in the past, have you done a closed session?
We have
To
not,
discuss that?
and we're coming up to number 3.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah, so for city council, Danielle just sends everybody the assessment form
Right.
for the city administrator.
Right.
I think she has to badger some people more than others to get it sent back,
Right.
but it's not like optional. Everybody gets it,
Okay.
and then it's all anonymous, and then she tabulates the results and writes up a summary of the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we meet in closed session, everybody gets to see those comments
Right.
and the ratings. And we talk about it with,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what
It's a
we-
nice way to do it.
It is. And I think, I checked with Danielle about the city's practice, which you just described.
Yeah.
I know enough about the inner workings of Waverly Shawrock Schools. They do the same thing with
Yeah.
the superintendent for that. So we're just suggesting that as a way of broadening board input into that.
If we make it optional and decide really it should be mandatory, we can change that policy then and have everybody on but I think optional might be
Let's
okay.
just stop for a minute and hash this over. You know, what city it says, no, you're gonna do it. What do we think?
Well, I mean, you can't force somebody to fill it out, right? Some people
Right.
don't read their emails, some people, but I think it's nice, because you want, then when you have a closed session, you hope that everybody's there, right? And you can give feedback and talk about the comments, and I'm not sure why you'd make it optional.
I heard
But
one
that's just
board
me.
member say in the last 6 weeks, I really don't want to be involved with this. I would disagree with that position, but that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I just listened to that, we just listened to that as a committee, and said, well, how about if we say we will distribute it to all board members? And then really it's up to you to turn it back. That's kind of
What's in the
like,
board job description? Is the board expected to evaluate their director?
I think the Personnel and Policies Committee specifically,
Oh, okay.
it says.
This would be an expansion
Yeah,
of
yeah.
right.
that.
James, Aaron?
I couldn't hear you exactly, Jim. You said you'd had some board feedback that not every board member felt comfortable or qualified to provide director feedback.
So to be real clear, this was one, oops,
Whoops, you're not used to it.
we've just been disconnected. Able to hear me again?
It's being controlled.
No?
Not really, but I think I got the gist.
Oh, well, to be accurate, one board member came up to me after, I think it was our last board meeting, and say, I don't have an interest in doing this. Not that she felt unqualified. She says, I'm not interested in doing that. I respected that, and that's a comment, like other board comments. So we addressed that, what we thought was a reasonable way. But with the language, all board members will receive a copy,
That would-
and then it's really up to you folks. As Ann said, we're not gonna come and hound you and knock on your door. We'll give you an opportunity with a date to
Yeah.
return.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay?
But,
And-
and just for clarification, so you said, just taking what the city already does with city administrators, so HR is sending out his evaluation or that position's evaluation to all
City
staff.
council, no.
Council.
So it depends on what type of eval's been done. So like this year, we got a link to a survey that we did, which is similar to this. And then you can write in comments and you rate people and then you submit it and Danielle tabulates all that. In the past, they've also done sort of a 360 where whoever James supervises, so department heads, would fill out comments and give feedback. And then we are also able to review that as part of our review of him because we hire and fire him, right? So I don't think they do that. I'm not sure the frequency that they do that, but there's a couple of different types of feedback that you get. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just as we're talking about this, I like that we're looking to, I don't know, open this up to the full board, because I do think that as a board member, it is our responsibility to make sure that we're participating in this. And I guess we have talked in past meetings about ways to get staff feedback too, so that 360 piece, I don't see that that's included in the plan currently, but I would like to see us figure out a way to incorporate that, especially knowing that that's a system that other departments
I think they do
in
it
the
for other
city already
department
use.
heads too, don't they, like Public Works, and we'd have to ask Danielle. But I always found it really helpful, because, everybody's experience with the city administrator or with a department head is different, right? And one person might spend more time with you than another, but each person has a different perspective, and you may have been helpful to them about a different thing, So I found, as somebody who was then asked to evaluate somebody, it was really nice to get that input.
Which is a practice that we did several years ago with library staff.
Yeah.
We didn't do it with everybody. P&P met with Sarah and says, do we collect it from everybody, or are there key individuals? We made the choice together to give it to some key individuals to do that. So do we wish to include that on an annual basis, every other year basis, tell us what you want, and while this is still hot and fresh and hasn't been completely baked, what is it that we desire?
Yeah, I would say I echo what Aaron was saying. I enjoy the broadening of this scope, but I would also include staff at very minimum every other year. But I think once a 1 year annual or evaluation from the staff, it's not, I don't think that's crazy. But I would be fine with every other year too, but.
The other thing it helped with is, I think, when you're giving feedback to someone, it's nice to give some specifics, right? About, here's specifically what people say are your strengths, or here's something that we noticed in a couple of evaluations of maybe something you could work on, right? And so you sort of see patterns, and it's just nice to get perspective of what type of leader do they see you as, right? And how do you interact with them? And then, of course, you're discussing it. It's not like it's hidden from the person, you're talking about it as a group and being constructive about next year's goals, right? Or whatever it is. So I found it really helpful. We do it at the hospital too, right? So we get feedback. I'm doing that right now, gathering feedback about the other providers, right, in my department. And so it's useful to see how are they interacting with people, what are their strengths, what are some things we can help them work on.
I think the distinction we made with the library employees,
I was just gonna I couldn't hear everything there. It sounded like you were talking about also including staff input, and I very much support that. It's, I think, important for Sarah, you to get those specific examples, like you were saying, Anne, if there are comments of what's working well and what may need to change, but I also think it's important for the staff to feel like they've got an opportunity to share that information as well. I think I've worked in different environments where that 360 feedback was gathered or wasn't gathered, and it's sometimes challenging to feel like, how is my supervisor judged when no one came and asked the people that report to them what they thought?
Two comments there. When we chose the employees to do or not, I think we made a distinction between clerks and really professional staff. And I'm hoping you'd give us the same latitude when we work with that. So that we saw was a pretty big distinction between that level. And to the other one, the more specific constructive criticism can be given, the more helpful it is. At the other place I used to work for a while, when those discussions occurred, we would kind of salt the oats with some kind of form which related to the director's responsibilities. So it wasn't just kind of a meandering conversation, I like her a lot or not. So you really kind of keep that discussion focused on, here are the several different portions that you and her may have worked with along the line. And I think that does help focus that discussion.
And HR from the city has those templates, right? Because we got to see, same set of questions, went to every person that helped then assess the city administrator. So
I had a long discussion with Danielle last week, and she's extremely
really
good at this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Then let's go on to 3, which is another one which we've already alluded to here, and that is what this is suggesting is that really for the first time in my knowledge, maybe I see Blake nodding her head, which means going back a century, that we've really never focused, we've never really had a regular board meeting in which we say, for a portion of this, we're going to go into closed session. Just to be clear on what those regulations are, that has to be in agreement with Sarah to do that. So we have to know what closed is, what open is. To go into a closed session, there are some very specific code requirements to make that happen. So we'll need to work through that as we come closer to it. We'll need a little board education probably as to say what are the must-dos for that.
Actually, many years ago, we did have a closed session dealing with personnel issues. And so it's been done, but not just for your everyday evaluation. It was
Right.
sort of an emergency thing.
And then I think it's important, the last line or two of that says, any significant findings, either positive or negative, will be shared with the director. So there's feedback there as well. And again, if our annual reviews has said, she's meeting expectations, then at this point, there may be some suggestions for personal improvement or professional improvement. So that would be helpful, I think, to Sarah. If we just didn't go into a room, she goes in another room, we talk, and then there's this blank wall when we come out. That's not professional growth. That seems to be kind of divisive to me.
Well, and I think it's helpful then, Sarah, you can give feedback, right?
Exactly.
So if you feel like
Exactly.
what the board is presenting to you, you see it differently,
Right.
that's an opportunity to talk about it.
Right.
Well, so do I attend those?
Yes, the closed session, you mean? Oh, yeah, yeah. And usually, you'd have to ask Danielle, so when, we typically get the summary right there at the closed meeting, and it's handed back in before we leave, so everything's confidential, protects your privacy, it's not recorded, you're able to do that. And so, yes, you're there, and you can talk with the board, and I find them useful. I think people take it seriously, and
It's good to hear that, Ann, because at the P&P meeting, I think we spent the most time on this issue of whether to move to a closed session.
And I
Because it hasn't really been done in the past, or hasn't.
I think it is recorded, at least ours were in the past.
well, you record it, but it's not televised,
Oh, no,
right?
no,
So
no,
somebody
everything.
takes notes,
Take
and you have
notes
a
and
record of
recording,
it, but
And
it's
we
not,
kept it with the city attorney.
it's closed,
Yeah, it's
it doesn't,
closed.
nobody
It-
talks about it outside of session.
Nope.
Of course, and anybody that's attending there that's not on the board.
They leave,
they
I leave, yeah.
Yeah, they leave.
Yep.
Yep.
And so, so it's usually done, we do ours at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
You have a motion to go into closed session, then you have to have a motion to come out of closed session, back into your open meeting, and then usually you
yeah.
adjourn. And so there's a set language that we have to say, it has to be moved, has to be voted on, to go into closed session. Well, you probably had to leave the room, right, when we've done at the end of council meetings, so it's pretty, there's standardized
What do the
language.
trustees think about this?
Well, for one, there is two things. So, yes, the board can dictate who's in the room for a closed session. So whether we want Sarah in here or not I don't mind either way. I'm just saying that's a board decision, and I think that just needs a little bit of clarification on what we plan to do moving forward. And then I like closed sessions only because then it allows, it's not a public meeting, right? And it's only closed session if Sarah wants to close session, that's the other thing too.
Right, it's at her request typically.
If Sarah doesn't want it, then we can't go into closed session, so.
Or you can
it's-
have the same discussion with Sarah there in a public meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other option.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the
the
other
other
option, right? So
Right.
closed session is all, like, it's designed to, I don't wanna say protect Sarah, but to prevent all of these conversations being public and then being able to be researched on Sarah's behalf. So, I'm a big fan of closed sessions for that purpose.
And the language usually, like when we go into closed session, it says at the request of an employee to discuss personnel matters. Where, and I think the phrase, I can't remember
Yep.
verbatim, but the phrase is like that might harm the person's
Right. In fact, it says,
standing or something like that. So
please
yeah, you're exactly
discharge
right, so it's
being
not,
considered when necessary to prevent needless
Yep.
and irreparable
oh yeah, it
damage.
must be in their handout.
So if Sarah doesn't even wanna go into closed session to talk about her evaluation,
Then you don't have to.
then we don't.
Right.
And so I guess that whole closed session is, it's ultimately up to Sarah.
It
We
is
all-
also practiced at least when I worked with the school district, the school board would do this. In that case, the superintendent was not in the room for a period of time. So that discussion was held, I would say privately with just
I
school
see.
board members.
Then you brought the superintendent
And
back
then
in.
the superintendent came back in for that. Now, what's been occurring the last 10 years, I don't know. But for a long period of time, it was.
Well, with our meetings, there's no press, there's really nobody's ever there's no audience, no in our meetings usually. They could be, but they,
But I think it's just a
But
way
they
to
aren't.
protect.
It is. I think it's-
Protect an employee's privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and the minutes taken are a little bit different.
Yeah,
and,
right.
I mean,
There's an
it's-
audio recording, we have to do an audio recording.
yeah, we have to do
of
that. The city does it when they're, sometimes when they're dealing with property
we
values
can do it for
and
real
money.
estate, we can do it
Yeah.
with personnel issues.
Yeah.
Now, the second point that I was gonna make was when things are spoken in closed session, which it is, so the significant findings of either a positive or negative shall be shared with the director by the board president. That one's a little bit touchy because it is a closed session. If the board is not in agreement with that, then that's not, I don't know if that's actually kosher. Because it is a closed session, you can't speak out of it outside of closed session. Therefore, anything that comes of that, unless unanimously approved by that board, actually cannot be spoken about that, if that makes sense.
How do
So
we
I don't know if
do
you'd go,
that?
if you'd have another like follow-up session, or Danielle could maybe help with, you know, I'm thinking out loud, but maybe you talk about, well, do we need to have a performance improvement plan for this point? And let's work on that, and then we'll reconvene a closed session at our next board meeting, or I don't know how you
Well,
want to do
going back to
that.
what Jim was saying, I think that's where the benefit of having the superintendent out of the room for just a portion of it, and then the superintendent brought in, because it is a little bit both, right? So I think that's where, that might be where they're
Yeah, I don't know.
having that, you know, kind of two portions of the closed session, but nothing spoken in a closed session can be spoken out.
Yeah, it's like.
I'm in complete agreement with that, so is
Code of
Danielle.
silence,
Danielle
code of silence.
actually helped me with this wording, so that there are some summaries that can be released. And that's where the language comes from.
Okay.
For that. It's never verbatim,
Right,
no one's ever quoted,
right.
but a summary of, here's one or two things that were discussed, not necessarily connected to results. You're just saying, here's some points that were discussed with the library director during a closed session. So, well, how do we proceed? Do we want to specifically describe what the closed session will look like now? Do we want to think about that for a month and make a decision? Or do we want to leave that open so every year we decide it's with Sarah or without Sarah?
What if we just decide on doing the hybrid model like you brought up? And then.
Which was, just to be specific,
The without Sarah and then bring Sarah in,
okay?
right? So that's what I meant by hybrid. And if we
Okay.
need to change it night of, or day of, or week of, or month of, whatever it is, then we can. But then ultimately, I mean, the closed session is, again, up to Sarah, so it would.
So what our language here says that we shall have a portion of our meeting for that. How it's done, the conditions are not described. Is that adequate? It says that once a year, we're going to have a closed session geared towards evaluation, without the specifics of that. So this is general. This could allow for Sarah being there all the time or a portion of the time. We're looking for you folks for direction for this.
Where's the language you're talking about in this?
It's under 3.
Number 3,
Okay,
board
the
shall.
board,
Right.
no. Oh, there, okay.
Right. It's, really what it says is that we'll enter into a
Yeah.
closed session. And the rest is pretty
Yeah, I
general.
would check, I would run it by did you talk to Danielle about it?
I did.
Does she, so it is the employee's decision whether they want it, and so.
Correct.
But you could also, I don't know if there are circumstances where you can say we need to have a closed session, right? If there's maybe not, okay. If there's an issue with the person's performance,
I don't think so.
No,
Okay.
it's all,
It would then be aired out to the public.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
Again, I don't think that's.
okay.
right,
Yeah, you offer her the opportunity for an annual closed session,
right.
yeah.
So I think there are good institutions that do it either way. Waverly Shell Rock has done it one way. Looks like City Council has done it another way, and I don't know what other boards do for that. Are we okay with the language as printed? Or do you want a month to think about it?
I think it's fine. Is there any state rule about this? For how
I mean,
libraries are, I don't know how,
The last clause is the most important. This is done with the knowledge and consent of the person you're evaluating.
yeah,
And
okay.
then, of course, the recordings and what's done with all that. Okay, it does not specify that the director must be there for all.
Okay.
She has to give her permission to have a closed
Yeah.
session about her.
Gotcha.
But it does not say she either has to be present or she couldn't be
Gotcha.
present. That's up to us. And I think that's why different groups, different boards do
Yeah.
it differently.
Well, I just think it's good that you're trying to standardize it,
Right.
right? So it's
That's right.
consistent, it's predictable, it's transparent, she knows what to expect,
Exactly.
you know?
And this is a way that we give input to our director, not on a slip of piece of paper that we write out and put it underneath their door.
Right.
I like how it's written.
Yeah.
Then since it was advanced from the P&P, I would call for a motion.
Jim, do we
Yeah.
need to select a month? You have that in?
Yeah, and that, we can either leave it blank and fill it in at the time, or we can specify.
Well, I was just looking, so the process begins in May and concludes in July, so would that be July, or would that be August that we would?
I
Discussing.
think all the other city evaluations are due on July 1st,
On July 1st.
usually.
And that's a schedule that we've been keeping. Right.
So then do we need to do that in June?
I think we have that power to decide what month we're gonna meet in. And that's why I purposely left it blank for when I wrote this,
Yeah.
to say if there's a month that's more appropriate, let's put it in. If we want to retain the flexibility to move it from January or to June, we can do that.
Flexible is always good.
Or you could do
until
like
we
a
know
certain
what we're
quarter
doing.
of the year, right? So that if
Sure.
your agenda is especially long, or,
Yeah,
I don't know.
something,
Did you want to add anything about these 360?
I did.
Oh, you did,
It's
okay.
in my notes, and I'll add to this and send it back around.
I think being flexible, since this is something relatively new, we can feel free to make a change in the month if we need it.
When was the last time you did this, or did an assessment? You could start it.
Last July,
Okay.
which is what our schedule has always been.
Oh, okay.
So we started, and that's where the first couple of paragraphs come in. We start in maybe middle of May.
So the last quarter of the fiscal year.
That's when we've done it.
So you could just.
Should we state
You
that?
could leave it with that,
In the last quarter of the fiscal year.
or,
Is that,
I don't know, doesn't matter to me.
I think it's fine the way it is, and then we just select it,
Okay.
in my opinion. Because for whatever reason, if we need to shift out of that, then we're getting out of policy and.
Well, and keep in mind, this isn't a policy. This will be a procedure.
Procedure,
Right, which is subject to easier change in the policy.
And then the P&P committee's in charge of making sure it happens,
That's right.
because time flies,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, we have a motion on the floor.
it's been seconded, and I think we're just at the vote stage now.
Any more questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you for your, I will change the words about adding the 360 and then just send it back out to Sarah for distribution. Okay. Now, there's one other, I think, related topic that may come later in budget that relates to evaluations that I think I'll mention now. We also used some of our time last Friday to talk about comparable salaries of our director. Sarah brought it to our attention several months ago. So we're living, once again, in two different worlds. We're living in the city world, and if you compare Sarah's salary to other directors doing comparable work, she's at least $10,000 below that norm group, okay? In fact,
For the Waverly, city of Waverly, and
other directors.
Other directors.
So the director of
Oh, City of
leisure,
Waverly.
leisure
Okay.
services.
Other directors here.
Other directors
Yes,
within the
okay.
city. So
Okay.
if you look at the city's pay scale for chief administrator, for directors, and then is it, what's the next level below?
Manager.
Managers, okay. Sarah's current salary really falls in the midst of the manager portion of the schedule.
For Waverly.
For Waverly,
Okay.
again, this discussion is City of Waverly. So if the norm group is the City of Waverly and their pay scale, we're currently paying our director nowhere close to her other director peers and somewhere in the middle of the manager peers. This is not said to be persuasive. This is a piece of information that as a board we need to be aware of. The other comparison group is other librarians within the state of Iowa who serve comparable communities for that. In that case, in fact, Danielle was very helpful a year or so ago to say that Sarah's roughly in the middle of that pack. Okay. And one of the factors for her placement there, through the eyes of Danielle, and this gets a little complicated, I'll try to make it really simple, is that Sarah has the luxury of having several high-trained, full-time librarians, in many cases with master's degree. So how you consider that in the size of Sarah's responsibilities as compared to another library in a similar town who doesn't have that kind of expertise in your staff, it's not quite apples to apples. But again, this isn't persuasion, this is simply saying, here's what it is. So we've kind of debated back and forth as to what is Sarah's peer group. And the answer is both or none, or someplace in the middle. We're not trying to overcomplicate that, but any kind of objective review would say that if you look at one norm group, she's not even on the list, and on the other way, she's roughly in the middle for that. So at that point, we really began to say, what do we prefer as a board, not for tonight, but very soon as we get into next year's budget. I think, Chairperson, we probably need a board discussion on this matter. Is that how do we feel as a board we should be compensating our director, all things being equal, she's meeting all the expectations performance-wise. So we're not talking about that at all, that's not the issue. We're just simply saying, as a board, do we feel we're compensating our director in a way that we feel is appropriate? That's a big deal. It speaks about retention, it speaks about the quality of management that employees get. It's a pretty big deal. Okay, I think they'll get easier from here. You also got last month, it says, we looked at the two board goals. This isn't library goals, this is board goals. And those are aligned director evaluation to the strategic plan. And we showed you a way last month as how to do that, because we've been doing that for the last several years. I'm not sure this got in the packet. I'll pass around this copy just so that you can look at that.
Is that the one page?
It's a one-pager, right, okay. So we looked at these, but we did not approve these.
I think I
It was
just,
on the table.
yeah, I've got it right,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay,
I've got it right here.
okay. And then the other one, now that I've passed my sheet around, the second board goal was about board recruitment, wasn't it?
Anticipate trustee vacancies.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So that one also has some timelines on it. And since what we put in there under, the first action was in January, and those are the odd number years in which the term limits come up. So we didn't replace a board member this year and even, but in 2025, we will, in fact, several. And so we're saying, 26, excuse me, that we need to get on this in the next couple of board meetings. So I'll just kind of bring that to your attention. So, came out of P&P to advance this for a vote. It's been seconded by us. Blake, I'll turn it over to you.
and we are advancing these two board goals. This
Correct.
is the motion to advance
Right.
board goal 1 and 2. It's come from committee.
Right.
Any more discussion or any discussion other than Jim's presentation? Feel free to ask as much as you need to know. But I do think we have discussed these fairly extensively here.
We just didn't approve it.
Yeah, we just have,
I was just gonna make the comment, and again, maybe I missed earlier discussion, but on action number 4, this isn't critical, but I really like to just document that we wanna, as we onboard new trustees, we also wanna review the relationship with the foundation and the Friends groups to really help educate folks on those as well.
That's an excellent addition. In fact, I'm writing down right now, Deanna, that we'll put that in.
Okay.
So we could approve it with the recommendations that Deanna just made,
Okay.
if we wish to.
Onboarding new trustees with discussions of foundation and friends, so they're aware of the whole picture of the library's office.
So does the mayor pick the library board members?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're saying that we want to be sort of proactive here in presenting someone who has showed interest. And then I think it does say in here that if they really are interested, that they will be encouraged to complete the city's online city and board commission application.
That's a requirement.
Yeah, that has to happen. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, that passed.
Okay.
6C, confirmation of 18-month strategic plan. I guess why we're bringing this up is that, Sarah helped me out on this, is that the certification has changed.
The accreditation
Accreditation.
deadline, instead of being 2025, it's now 2026 due to a retirement at the state library.
Okay. So, coming out of P&P, these, it's suggested that we stick with the 18-month strategic plan, rather than
Try a huge,
pushing it back to 30 months.
yeah, rather than a huge 3 to 5 year plan.
And particularly because we're using this next 12, 18 months to see what's going on with the brand new library.
Yeah.
We think that's really critical. So to kind of push that back by someone else's decision, we didn't think was very appropriate. So we're staying the course,
Yeah.
as George Bush would say.
That's just informational, moving on.
Okay,
Okay. 6D, if you find in your packets, Waverly City Code, Chapter 43, it boils down to 43.3 in finance, in the language that's being used. It comes down to that last sentence, right?
Yes.
yeah, president and secretary. Because it did say treasurer, or the board would have a treasurer. We may have had a long time ago, but now all that's taken care of through city finance department. And we have a president and secretary, but the treasurer is not the one that signs the checks that go out to vendors.
Back in the days when the library did their own check writing,
That would
that's the
work.
way it worked.
And now,
But-
and so that's the only thing that's been changed in here. And I think you've discussed it with the city, everything's been discussed.
We were asked by the city clerk just to review this document to see if it still looked correct. So that's the only change that we would suggest, is to have it signed by the library director.
Yeah. Okay, and do we need, I think we need to approve this change. Well, the city will need to approve it. Do we just need to send the recommendation to the city to do it?
Well, and then the revision of the loan and billing policy has been reviewed to reflect those changes.
Yeah. So we're done with D. We just corrected the language in
Right.
Chapter 43. The city will take care of getting it affected. We're now ready to move on to loan and billing policy review. Any presentation here? I think things are in blue that are obvious. Corrections, is that
Those are
right?
the changes.
The only change we made really was to the URL that you go to log into your account as a patron if you want to renew your items. So under renewing library materials, we just changed to the correct web address.
The third item down on the title page, yeah, okay.
Which works really slick, I have to say. It's very easy to renew your books.
Good.
Without paying the fine? Or no?
Fines.
No fine.
No fines.
No
No fine, no fine.
But no, it's really nice. You used to have to email back, and now you just go in and click
Right.
renew. Great.
Good.
But they do still send out notices to patrons.
Looks like, yeah.
Yep.
I usually just answer that, and it gets taken care of. Okay,
So we need that voted on because it's
we
a
do.
policy change.
This motion, or the motion is from the committee, does not need a second. Do I hear all in favor of approving this updated library loan and billing policy? Aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, that's taken care of. And we are now ready for Deanna. Number 7, make room for renewal. You sent out a report to
Did I miss the loan
us.
and billing policy?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, we voted on it. You
You voted yes.
you voted yes.
Thanks for your affirmative vote.
Yeah.
Construction progress, I guess I'll leave that to you, Sarah and Aaron, who've been closely involved here lately on that part of it.
I think, construction is wrapping up. We're celebrating with our donors on Friday and with the public at our grand reopening on Saturday. So there is a construction meeting tomorrow morning, so there's still punch list items, but it's getting smaller, so that's good. I don't know, do you have anything else, Sarah?
I don't think I have anything to add. There are just a handful of punch list items.
Anything
Okay.
that's impeding use of the library, or are they pretty minor?
They're pretty minor. A couple of them have to do with lights.
Lights.
Yeah, lights have
Really?
been, yeah.
Yeah.
And a couple with trim. So, yeah, it's pretty minor.
Okay, Deanna, you want to talk fundraising committee?
Yes, and Sarah, did you distribute the campaign update?
Yes, I did.
All right. Same format as we've been using, so if you take a look at that, I'll walk through this pretty quickly again as we're getting close to the finish line. If you start with the revenue side of the sheet, again, we've got about $941,000 in gifts and pledge payments. We have just over $150,000 in outstanding pledges and some online fees. So we raised a little over $1,090,000 in private gifts. We've received of our various grants, we've received $219,800. We have just one grant that has a final payment that will be coming once we provide our final report, and that's the Blackhawk Gaming Commission. From the CAT grant, we've received $322,151, and as we wrap up and once the final budget is complete, then we expect to get around another $39,000 or so, maybe a little bit less than that. Of course, we received our $700,000 from the city and $25,200 from the county, and then the foundation made their pledges of totaling $525,000. We had some things that we could fund out of the operating budget, and then we had some excess fundraising, so grand total of revenues is 2.9 million, well, 2,962,336 as of yesterday. Any questions on the revenues before we flip to the expenses?
So Deanna, there's 4 parties that haven't made any pledge payments. Do you think they're ever going to be good for it, or do they need to be written off? What's your take on that?
Could you hear the question?
I think it was about outstanding pledges.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, right now, the pledges that are outstanding were all, are all ones where we had okayed multi-year pledges. And so those are payments scheduled in the future here. So we don't have, other than maybe 1 or 2, we don't have any where there's any significant pledge that has not been made according to schedule. So I anticipate a bulk of that will come in, but we have talked about that should we have a shortfall because we don't get those pledges in, then we will, you know, utilize foundation dollars to help make good on that.
Is there a way to total up those 4 individuals who have not pledged any at all? Is that a large figure, a small figure?
It is not a large figure. I mean, it's not $20, but it's not, you know, a giant pledge that hasn't had any payments on it.
Okay.
It seems to me that the fact that that's where we are is sort of amazing in this huge.
Yeah, no.
Huge.
It just seems like it's been at 4 for a while. I
That's
didn't
right.
know if
Yeah, but the
people
whole-
were
the
just
whole
not
thing, if-
able to fulfill their pledges, if it's a delayed situation. But no, I agree. I think
it's just
considering how
amazing.
many total donors, that's a really
Yeah.
good percentage.
Says a
yeah.
lot about
Yeah.
Waverly and the people that have
Yeah,
supported the project.
yeah.
Well, and that's what Danny would say as well. You know, having done this professionally, other campaigns, they have an extremely small percentage of donors at this point who haven't given any. I mean, that's a pretty consistent human behavior. So that's apparent here.
As I recall, 25 years ago, we also had a very similar response.
Yep.
People actually followed through with
Yeah.
Right.
what they said they were going to do, which is sort of amazing. Okay, keep going, Deanna.
All right, so then let's look at the expenses. You know, we're pretty close to done here with our architects. Just this last month or so of the contract extension that we will still need to pay the invoice for. But everything there is pretty much wrapping up. Our fundraising consultants, that's also pretty much wrapped up, although they've helped us with some of the celebration invites and some things there. The last task that we'll have with them is for them to help us convert the website over to function as our foundation website. And so there'll be a little work with them on that. Construction, of course, is where the major things are still, we've still got outstanding payments. On the construction bid, we've paid a little over $1.6 million. On the bid, we also had a little over 33,000 in change orders, and we have about 245,000 remaining. That includes 220,000 on the bid itself, and then the various change orders that have been discussed. There still hasn't been a final response on the biggest chunk of that we are hoping to avoid, which is the extension costs related to the lighting delays. And I know they've been having multiple conversations, and we're hoping for an update from them at the construction meeting tomorrow. I continue to be quite hopeful that we won't have to pay, maybe a portion of that, but not the bulk of it. We're done with the story tree. We're getting close to done with the furniture and shelving. We've paid about $341,000 so far. There's a final bill for the move of the shelves and a final bill for the furniture that are remaining there. And then in all the other category, again, most of this hasn't changed a lot since last month. We do have the pods. The pods have been cleaned out and removed. And the way that those bills work, we end up reimbursing the city after those payments are made. So that will get cleaned up here with the final pods payments. We'll have some additional inspections coming once the project is all wrapped up. We have completed the roof repair. We've got a remaining payment on the light bright wall and the screens, the new screens that were installed in the meeting rooms, and a remaining payment on the signage, which has all been installed now. And then just a few things with miscellaneous expenses, particularly for the reopening celebrations. So all in all, our total budget looks to be right at the 2.9 million. So we're getting down to the last bills to be paid. Any questions on the expense side? And again, assuming we are able to work through those issues with the contractor, then we end up coming in under the 2.9 million.
And you may find that out tomorrow, is that correct? Or at some point with the lighting?
We hope to find out tomorrow. I don't know if they'll have an answer.
Okay, any more questions for Deanna? What would we have done without you, Deanna?
I would have done just fine.
No, I don't think so.
So we did have a fundraising committee meeting here a week or so ago, and got some further discussion about the wrapping up of the project and the reopening events. So that's a good segue to our events later this week. And a reminder that we will have our donor celebration on Friday night from 6 to 7. And then we will have the grand reopening for the public on Saturday morning from 10 to noon. And we've been doing a lot of work to remind people of that. We've got an article that's emphasizing the date in tonight's paper. You may have seen that. That goes really well with the kind of the feature article on the front page that Erin, thank you for participating in photos and comments for that one last week. And then we will have a reminder banner ad in Thursday's paper of the date and time for the public grand opening. Been doing a lot of work here. Erin's done a tremendous amount of work to help organize for the two events. And I'll just give a little bit of a highlight. Hopefully all of you are able to be there for one or both events. I think for both of them, we're anticipating someone will give some brief opening remarks. You know, they're both set up as open houses, so there's not a big formal program or anything, but just a little bit of welcoming and opening remarks. Certainly for the public event on Saturday, we've got a ribbon cutting that we'll officially do there. But after those opening remarks, I will be providing all of you with a handout that's talking points that you can use to review and just remind yourself of some of the things we'll want to make sure and share with the attendees as they're walking around. But we'll have staff stationed around the room and in their various areas, and I'm kind of looking for the board and fundraising committee folks who are there to serve as guides and help make sure people are getting around to each of the areas and having a chance to visit with the staff and ask them questions and see all of the cool components in the new building. For the donor event, you know, we also build this as a little bit of a special thing. You know, feel free to guide them back to, you know, take a peek in the staff area or the new storage room, areas that the public doesn't typically get to see, to give it a little bit of a special feel.
Hot tub area, hot tub.
And of course, the key part is, you know, we just want to say a lot of thank yous, certainly to the donors who helped us make it happen, but also, you know, to all the public for their patronage and their support of the library in the past. We really couldn't have done all of this without any of them. I certainly wish I could be there. Unfortunately, that's right after a chemo treatment when I'm feeling at my least well. But, you know, enjoy the event and take photos if you think of it. And I know, Erin, you've got a lot of the details too about both the flow of the event as well as the refreshments and things that are going to be provided. So I'll let you jump in with that.
I don't know how much everybody really wants to know about all the details, but
Everything.
But yeah, Friday, the library closes at 5:30, so we do just only have half an hour between public getting out and then opening the doors to our donors. So if anybody can come, you know, at 5:30 at least, that would be great, just so you can get a lay of the land and kind of see how things are set up and make sure you know what's going on. I do have some wonderful help to serve our food. We're having just some light hors d'oeuvres and little dessert bites, and Zach Leisinger is making a fun little mocktail for the event for us on Friday. So that will be wonderful. And then Saturday is just cookies and lemonade and coffee. So that will be a little less moving parts to juggle. But
When
yeah.
you come, as board members, when you come in the back door that night, because we will have to close the front doors for just a little while
Good.
to make that separation between open and closed.
What time's the ribbon cutting on Saturday?
10 o'clock.
10, right at 10, okay.
And Jim was over there going like this, and yeah, Deanna did
Big scissors.
get the big
Yeah.
scissors, so
Oh, wow.
it's like the real deal, so.
So on Saturday morning, do you want us to act as kind of informal tour guides, or do we mingle, or do we kind of route them around?
All of
You know, I think it's a little bit of both, Jim,
Okay.
if that was Jim.
Yeah, yes, it was.
And I do think it may take a little bit of tour guiding just to make sure people are, you know, getting around to each of the areas and say, you know, hey, some of you come with me and let's take a look in the youth area, or let's check out the teen room. And then, you know, introduce them a bit with use of the talking points to some of the new things that are there, and then let the staff person who's in the vicinity answer questions or provide any of their comments. I think it's exciting. Already the staff has got some great stories of how many people have come in and the kind of comments that they've provided how the public is using some of the parts of the building already. So, let them share those kinds of things as well. You're just sort of helping make sure everybody has a really good experience and gets around to all of the great new features. We're also going to have some pre-construction, so pictures of the building in various areas previously, just sitting around on some acrylic stands, and that'll be something else to make sure people are noticing, here's what it used to look like, because if you're like me, you're already starting to forget because it's so great. Some of the new spaces look so different, but remember, this is where this was located, and people can check those out. We'll also, certainly at the donor event, want to make sure people are seeing in the vestibule the new bookcase donor wall. All the donor names will be scrolling on the digital donor screen. And of course, people who reserve naming opportunities, they'll have a chance to look for their naming plaques around the building as well. So it's a celebration, and we just want to make sure everybody feels really appreciated for everything they've done and gets a real chance to explore all the areas of the new and renewed facility.
So this is another Saturday morning question. So would it be helpful for the public and us as trustees to have a badge that says library? So in other words, as I walk up to a stranger Saturday morning, that we know what our roles are, other than just, who is this guy that's starting to talk to me?
That they don't run away from you?
Yeah, right. I'm just
You
kind of
just
like.
have a name tag on that says board member?
Yeah, just something like that. so
Ask
that-
me.
Something like that.
Sure. Yeah, that'd probably be a
Yeah,
good
I
idea.
think that's great. We just get some sticky name tags or whatever and
Hi, I work at Hy-Vee. Yeah.
have those.
Yeah.
Deanna, can you clarify for everybody which names are on the donor wall in the lobby and which names are on the TV screen in the lobby, just so we all know?
Yeah, the donor wall in the vestibule is everyone who gave $1,000 or more. So they're everybody except kind of our friends and family first tier. Those names are on the books, on the bookcase donor wall. And those are both for the original construction, we preserved all of those names, and for the renewal project. So anybody who had a hand in those upper tiers of making the building what it is today is on that wall. Then on the digital donor screen, everyone's name is on that scroll of the donor, on the donor screen. And that includes the original construction and the renewal project, but it also includes everybody who donates to the library or has donated to the library in this past year. So people who gave for the bookmobile, people who gave memorial gifts, people who gave to some of the reading programs like Read to Go or what's the one for
Reach
kids
out and
at the
read.
doctor's office?
Reach out and read.
It's escaping me now.
Reach out and read.
Reach out and read, thank you. So all of the donors are listed on the digital donor screen. And then, as I said, throughout the building, those that reserved naming opportunities, both original construction and renewal, they have plaques in the vicinity of the spaces that they gave their donation toward. So everybody who's there for the donor event should see their name either both on the permanent donor wall and the screen, or if they were in that first tier of friends and family, which has got hundreds and hundreds of names, then they're just on the donor screen.
How about somebody that gave for the outside, what about somebody that gave for the outside landscaping and stuff? That would be inside, but is there anything outside yet?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Okay.
There were two donors that, that were sponsoring the two new gardens, and both of those signs are installed on the exterior.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and just on the donor wall with the bookcase in the vestibule, that there is a key on there, so if someone's looking for their name, if they know what they gave, then they can find what color book they should be looking for to find their name up there.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Great
this is
question.
gonna be exciting. It
Yes, it is.
actually is. Okay, are we ready to move on to item 8, other reports? Buildings and grounds, do you have anything more to say?
No, don't think we do.
This is sort of a wind down of your constant attention to this for how many months?
Quite a few.
A lot of months.
Yeah.
Lot.
Now we gotta take care of it all.
Now, yeah.
Your work is not done.
Okay, personnel and policies anymore?
I guess the only thing I would add is that Danielle Stratton of us, the city HR, was not able to attend our P&P meeting. And so we're still collecting data on compensation for our director and a fair compensation. So we're in that collection process.
Okay.
Okay.
Which it sounds like by budget time, we better have that sooner than later.
Well, hopefully we have in December.
Right. We're gonna meet before our next board meeting.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we'll need that ASAP, because once we start putting our budget together, we're gonna need to know, you know, what our decision is moving
Right.
forward on that, so.
I think we have our next actual, just the 4 of us, meeting on December
Second.
2nd, yeah. So we certainly need it by then.
Well,
We may have to, I think ours is like a day or two after that, so we may have to reschedule that, which may fall into Thanksgiving week, if I'm seeing the calendar right.
Thanksgiving.
That's a
is-
Monday, December 2nd's a Monday.
Yeah,
Right,
that's our
right.
usual.
Right. And we were gonna meet like the 3rd or 4th, a couple days after you, so we may have to
You may
look
have to
at
scooch that up. a
something,
bit.
right.
Yeah,
Which would fall into Thanksgiving week, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
We
yeah,
can coordinate,
we can.
yeah.
Okay, budget and finance has already said what they had to say. Anything, Deanna, from the foundation now?
Just that our investment committee had its quarterly meeting here a few weeks ago, and we've been looking in detail at the upcoming expenses for the campaign and making sure that our foundation pledged money is being moved out of our long-term investment account into our checking account as we need to pay those upcoming expenses. So I think we've got a plan in place for that. We also talked about how we will handle it for any of the pledges that haven't yet come in. And so laid out a strategy for moving the money as we need it.
Thank you. Friends of the library, we don't have anyone here, but anything that you know of, Sarah, that might,
No, they had a fundraiser today at the 506 Cafe that some of us got meals from. They have a meeting scheduled here. Maybe that was just within the last couple of days, but they've set out a budget for next year, and their room is getting lots of donations. So I think they're back up and running.
and strategic planning, we sort of discussed all that already. Anything to add?
There's some dates along we need to be aware of, because our original schedule was that we were gonna send off, board was gonna approve that no later than January, so we could send it off in February. And we're gonna adhere to that schedule. So sometime perhaps at December meeting, even though there's other stuff there, we probably better allot some time for Sarah to fill in what her and the staff have been doing.
Okay. And more director comments?
No, just that I sent out annual reports so that you could see what had been submitted. The one that we sent to the city had so many images in it that it bounced back from a couple of your email addresses. So if you'd like a copy of that, let me know. But the other one was the one that we put out to the state library, and I'll just mention one statistic from that one, which was interesting, considering how many weeks we were closed during that 23-24 report year, is that our physical circulation was 100,788, and that is 77% of what it was the previous year. So we still had a pretty strong physical circulation and a pretty strong number of visitors as well, even though the library was really in flux during that time. So if you have questions about that report, just let me know.
Okay, board comments. Let's start with Bob.
On May 9,
Jim?
Pass.
Me? No.
I'm excited for Friday and Saturday, and I think that's a nice little celebration for all the hard work. And so there's a lot of stuff that's happens behind the scenes and applause to everybody.
Aaron spent a lot of time on that.
And I was saying, and off of that, like, come and also like bring your significant others and your families, and I mean, just, yeah, bring your friends, show off what we've done, and yeah, there's a lot to be proud of, so.
Ross?
Nothing from me.
Ann, you got any comments to, thank you for being here tonight, and
Is the next meeting here or at the library?
At the library.
Okay.
for the first time since, in a long time.
Oh, like in an actual meeting? Okay.
All right, we've reached the point of adjournment. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye? We're done.
Yep.
Thank you.